What's a gut feeling that saved yours or someone else's life? Scenario: driving myself and two coworkers back from lunch. Didn't immediately go when my light was green as I got this weird knot in my stomach like something was gonna go down. Car next to me went forward and got slammed into a brick building and posed by a speeding car that went through his red. Some debris rained on my car, but basically was left unscathed. Shook but unscathed. This happened like a year ago, but I still remember it clearly. I was walking to school, and there was one of these roads where there's a little place in the middle for pedestrians to stop for a moment. So anyways, I was waiting, not at the pedestrian stop, but at the edge of the road. This guy in a car gestured at me to cross the road, but my gut started screaming loudly at me to not go. He didn't even have time to roll down his window before the guy behind him crashed right into the back of the first guy's car, sending two cars skidding right across the ducking road and over the pedestrian stop thing. Avoided something big there. Do not get into a car with someone who says they are just a little tipsy. The guy who was trying to convince us that he was totally fine to drive didn't die that night, but he did have to spend 2 years learning to walk again. Not much intuition, but lucky instincts, haha. I was in the car with my sister, 7 and 5 years old. I'm the oldest, while our mom was buying something at the drugstore. We were parked in front of the shop. She usually took like 5 minutes. Take the meds and back. She closed the car, but we could still open from the inside. So I get a major urge to pee. Urgent like now. I decide to go to the shop and ask to use the bathroom. We lived in a small town and the people of that shop know me. And in the end I was a 7-year-old asking to pee. And it was like a few steps away from the car. Well, so I take my sister, open the door, and when we are like a few steps away, a drunk driver crashed into our car, destroying it totally. The people from the shop came to see, and our mom was in shock, but calmed down when she saw me and my sister in one piece. You can imagine, all tears and relief, that much that I wet myself. I felt like I really needed to check on an old lady I sometimes give company to. She was having a heart attack in her house. My son has leukemia and is on chemotherapy. He was just off, looked paler than usual, and something just felt odd. Turns out chemo had obliterated his blood so much it might as well have been water and he would have died within days. 2 blood transfusions, 5 days hospital and 2 weeks off chemotherapy, and he was on the mend. I went into traumatic shock, and the one thing that pulled me out was a debrief with my doctor, who told me I had just saved my child's life with my maternal instinct and never doubt it. Fast forward a few months, and he got an infection, and that same odd feeling woke me up. He spent a week in hospital that time. Parental instinct is there for a reason. Don't doubt it when you feel it. It's not like feeling a concern or worry that something might be wrong. It's a deep primal knowing. Years ago, my wife and I were driving on the expressway that was under major construction. Traffic had slowed quite a bit, and I saw a plume of smoke ahead. As we drew closer, I could see it was the beginning of a car leak, but the driver was still in the vehicle. I did a death-defying move to cross multiple lanes of traffic to pull over. Despite my wife's protests about being late to the event we were headed to, I approached the car, which was just starting to produce visible fire from the wheel wells, and opened the door to the car. The guy was conscious, but in obvious shock and was unresponsive. I had to reach in to unbuckle him and pull him out of the car. Within seconds of me getting him out, the driver's compartment was completely engulfed in flames. In 2015 there was a fire in the Collective Club in Bucharest, Romania during a rock concert. It was free entry and me and my friend were supposed to go, but at the last minute I decided not to. I just don't know why. I called my 2 friends and boyfriend saying I'm not going anymore, and decided to meet at my place instead. 27 people died that night. The total number was 64. We lost 3 people we knew very well. It was a disaster. Was hanging out with my brother, who was visiting from a few hours away. We went to one of his high school friends' house to shoot the shit. My brother's friend had a kid who was literally bouncing off the walls. After one bounce I heard a little scrape behind me. I looked behind me to see the 8-point spear head mounted to the wall just in time for another bounce. I snatched that head out of the air just about 3 inches from giving the kid 4 stab wounds to the skull. Might not have been deadly and might have been a coincidence. But judge for yourself. When I was a kid I loved to go on walks around town with my aunt. One day I absolutely refused to cross the street to pick up some drinks at our usual corner store. Apparently there was a cat demon inside the corner store who would kill us. In my defense, I was about 8 years old and obsessed with a fairy tale story where a cat demon sets out to kill a hunter. While we were standing on the sidewalk arguing about corner store demons, a driver lost control of their car and crashed next to the store. Nobody got hurt, but my aunt and I might well have been if we'd just crossed the street without me making a fuss. I'm not sure if this counts, but when I was younger I had this white betta fish named Dove. One night I had an extremely vivid dream about waking up the next morning and finding her dead, as well as a very strong urge to wake up. I woke up and went down the hall to check on her. She was lying on the electrical socket near the tank. We always kept the tank a few feet to the side of the sockets and never directly in front of them in case some water splashed out. But I guess she jumped out and landed on one of them. I'm not sure if the small amount of water on her would have been enough to start an electrical fire if it got into the socket, but safe to say I'm glad I woke up when I did. Also, she was alive and had only a minor injury to her side where she landed on the socket. TL doctor something told me to wake up and check on my fish, potentially saving me from an electrical fire. When I was 12 I stayed up watching TV. Thought I heard a knock on my wall, but assumed it was because our house was old. 4 notes. My bedroom is under my dad's bathroom 10 feet away from the bed itself. Had a gut feeling something was wrong, so went to wake my mom as we hear a loud thud from upstairs, shaking the living room fan. I run upstairs and my dad is having a seizure on the floor and scream as loud as I can, Mom, help. He almost died of a blood sugar crash. Me being up saved his life. I had befriended a very troubled girl when I was 18. She was 2 years younger and had horrible parents, horrible friends, and horrible judgment. She was on Tinder pretending to be 18 and showed me some conversations with a guy in his early 20s that she was planning on meeting. I told her I could not pinpoint why, but he gave me bad vibes. There was no red flags in the convo, but I had a horrible sense of dread about it beyond the anxiety of her pretending to be an adult on Tinder. Her nasty little friends ended up convincing her I was jealous, so she went on the date anyway, but took some pepper spray I gave her. I was 100% correct. He followed her to her car after she cut short the very bad and creepy date, grabbed her, and she pepper sprayed his ass, and drove away. We aren't friends anymore. Had to realize at a certain point that I'm not a therapist, but I hope she's made better choices since then. Hiking near a waterfall in Costa Rica with my in-laws. I had a gut feeling that someone was going to slip and fall over the cliff, so I was very on edge. Then my sister-in-law slipped, almost fell over the ledge, but I grabbed her and her rope in a split second, and all was well. That day, my crippling anxiety saved a life. I was playing in the deep end of the pool with a bunch of my cousins having a good old time. Something told me to turn around towards the shallow end, and when I looked behind me, there my sister was, drowning. It's crazy because she was in the shallow end, with floaties on, but got stuck upside down and couldn't flip back over. What even crazier was that this was a BBQ. There were adults literally everywhere, and I was the only one who saw it. I calmly swam towards her. Her legs were thrashing in the air, damn near kicked me in the face, flipped her right side up, hoisted her onto the ledge of the pool, and was like, hey mom, sister's name was drowning, and went back to playing. And you know what? My sister didn't even look phased, just asked for a hot dog without bread and kept it pushing. This is before cell phones think beepers. I went out one night and was meeting my bestie halfway between my house and hers. I noticed this truck drive by me and he slowed down to a crawl. Another car was coming, so he kept going. My spidey senses were triggered though. I saw my best friend and I grabbed her and pulled her into an old shed at an abandoned house. I shut the door quick and told her to be quiet. There was a space, so we were able to see this truck coming. She is whispering rapidly to me asking what is happening. I told her that I had seen that guy a few minutes before and he made me nervous. He slowly crept down the street, pulled over and got out with a flashlight. That's when we saw the gun. The most terrifying thing, it was only moments, but felt like hours. He finally took off, but I was hesitant to leave yet. We stayed there for about 15-20 minutes and he came back 4 or 5 times. Finally we heard our names being called. Her older brother and his best friend had come looking because it typically takes 10 minutes to get from my house to hers. I'm convinced that she and I would both be dead if it wasn't for that shed and me trusting my spidey senses. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe,